The Florida Gators didn't land any 2025 commits this weekend, but there's still good news and nothing to be concerned about.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to, that's right, another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. As always, I am very lucky to be your host, Brandon Olsen. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bets, $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And like I said, the Florida Gators didn't land any 2025 commitments this weekend, which all of us kind of were hoping, yeah, maybe you get someone. But as far as 2025 kids go, I think it's important to remember the same thing happened last year. It's kind of rare for kids to pop on the first weekend of official visits, right? They go, they take their other previously scheduled visits, which we'll talk about for quite a few of the kids that were on campus this weekend. We'll get to that a bit later. But Florida does, and I mean specifically Florida under Billy Napier, does a good job of making a lasting impression and kind of winning with a lot of summer recruits and summer commits. And one way that they won this weekend without landing a 2025 kid was that they landed a commitment from 2026 quarterback Will Griffin. Will Griffin committed to the Florida Gators on Saturday. And it's not super shocking. I know it kind of felt like it came together really quickly, but you look at the rest of the dominoes really in that 2026 quarterback class, and a lot of kids already committed. They committed early, and that's going to be a thing, I think, with a lot of players, is you'll see them commit early at the absolute worst to secure their spot in a class with a program. You look at guys like Noah Grubbs, he committed. The dominoes kind of started falling. And Will Griffin tweeted out on Saturday early afternoon. He was like, hey, I think it's time. And then Saturday afternoon, it's like, oh, hey, he's taking an unofficial visit to Florida. And then he tweets out, hey, 5 minutes on Instagram Live. And then you go on Instagram Live and he's in the swamp. Billy Napier, 50-yard line, commits to the Florida Gators, and I love it. I think it helps you with every single position in the 2025 class too, except quarterback. Because now other quarterbacks are going to look at what you've got in Gainesville, and they're going to say, okay, Graham Mertz is there this year. Fine. They've got DJ Lagway in the 2024 class. He's on campus, obviously. He's there. I mean, he's been crowned already as the heir apparent to that starting quarterback spot for the Florida Gators, right? So you figure 2025, 2026 is going to be DJ Lagway. Then maybe goes to the NFL, maybe you get 2027. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen in 3 months, let alone 3 years, right? But as far as from a 2025 quarterback perspective, you got DJ Lagway, who's the heir apparent. There's an insane amount of hype. We talked about this on Friday with Brian Smith, where it's got to be at least a little intimidating, maybe even off-putting, if you're a 2025 quarterback that's being recruited by Florida, because everywhere you look involving the Florida Gators, DJ Lagway's there. He's there. He's everywhere. He's in a Gatorade commercial during game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. He's everywhere. He's the guy. That's who you're going to be directly competing with. A lot of kids don't want to do that, right? And also, a lot of kids are going to look at it and go, okay, well, if he's the guy, then I don't have a spot for 2 years. I have to sit. And then in 2026, they've got this 4-star kid coming in, Will Griffin. Probably going to climb up rankings a lot too. But I do think that if you're any other position, if you're a receiver, a tight end, offensive lineman, hell, defense, you go, all right, well, pretty set at quarterback, right? Like, that's the most important position. And you're set at it. Awesome. Perfect, right? Wide receiver Joshua Moore, who's on campus this weekend, he mentioned that he loves that he knows what the present and future looks like at quarterback because he's a 2025 receiver, which means for the first 2 years of his career, he's going to have DJ Lagway. And then every other year of his college career, he would ideally have Will Griffin, and he's going to be in the NFL by the time Will Griffin leaves. It's perfect if you're any position but quarterback. Also, I mentioned this with the Locked On Gators insiders, which if you're not part of the insider program, you should be. Recruiting weekends are pretty wild with the updates. You can ask anybody in there. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're in the insider program, comment how many notifications I sent out this week, how many messages I sent out this weekend during all this recruiting and baseball and softball. It was wild. Links in the description below if you want to join it. But I was talking about the roster building process, and I kind of love it because in the NFL, you want to build most of your team and then draft your quarterback. Because if you've got a good team around your quarterback, you make your quarterback's job easier. And if you make his job easier and he can kind of play up to the level of his teammates before he surpasses them, if he becomes a franchise quarterback, then you're maximizing his rookie contract. So you want better players around him before you get the QB. However, when we're talking about actually building a roster in college, having your quarterback early is better. You look at the 2024 class, and they had DJ Lagway early, had a couple other guys, but DJ Lagway early, and they built around him. Now, the 2026 class, Will Griffin is the first commitment for the Florida Gators in the 2026 recruiting class. And everything you do gets to be built around him. Like this is where it's very different from the NFL. Because in the NFL, you need to maximize that rookie contract. You need to maximize that with your salary cap. Because, you know, you could be paying top flight edge rushers while you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, and you're walking away looking beautiful from it. Especially if it's like the first couple of years of your quarterback's contract where you can't even offer an extension. Perfect. But college, you get that QB, and then you get to tell every receiver, hey, this is your QB. You want to catch passes from DJ Lagway and then Will Griffin? Tight end, you want to catch passes from DJ Lagway, then Will Griffin? Offensive lineman, you want to block for DJ Lagway, then Will Griffin? You've set yourself up to go, hey, we've got the guy at quarterback for the next, 5 years, we'll say? Again, this is assuming they work out. And that's also an important part. We were talking about this in like the Twitter spaces the other day where people were talking about whether or not Will Griffin is good enough to be the guy, whether or not he deserves a ranking, whatever it is. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter that much. Honestly, independently, it doesn't matter that much. Because he's a high-ranking quarterback, it will help convince other kids to come play with you. You get better players around him, he will play better. You get better players around him and he doesn't live up to expectations, you grab a quarterback from the transfer portal and you're right back into the mix. So honestly, just in the grand scheme of things, each individual blue chip quarterback working out is not that important. It's you get, a blue chip quarterback every year, every other year, as long as you're hitting on some of them, landing in the transfer portal, whatever it may be, you've got your answers because other blue chip recruits will follow a blue chip quarterback. We see it every year. It'll happen. So as far as what I think of Will Griffin, what you think of Will Griffin, what anybody thinks of Will Griffin independently, really not that important because he's going to serve his purpose, helping get a better recruiting class around him. And that should be really what you care about mostly. I know that we have to get hung up on individual kids and whether or not they're going to work out. But really, like as a Florida Gators fan, I want the Florida Gators to succeed. I want every player also to succeed. But first and foremost, I want the Gators to succeed, right? And so I understand that not everybody's going to work out. That's okay. It sucks, but that's okay. Not everybody's going to work out. But you get more talent. It's a talent acquisition business. And we're talking, speaking of business, we're going to get a quick word from LinkedIn before we talk about the other 2025 kids that were on campus this weekend. When you're hiring for your small business, see how it ties in always? You want to find quality professionals that are right for their role, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the tool to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just another job board. I'm on it. Odds are you're on it too, right? There's a ton of people on LinkedIn, and it makes sense why they're there because it's damn good. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. I can tell you, I am in that 70% that does not visit other leading jobs for LinkedIn at least a couple times a week. Anywhere else? Never in my life. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours, so you can hire professionals like a professional. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. And again, this weekend was a massive weekend for official visits for the Florida Gators. You had 14 kids on campus, 7 on offense, 7 on defense. 2 of them were already Florida Gators commits in running back Chad Gasper and defensive lineman Jeremiah McLeod. Not going to really talk about them. Nothing's changed. They're committed. Who would have thought, right? But Florida did have, we're going to start with the offensive guys. Quarterback Antoine Hill, visiting Memphis next week, is set to commit in mid-July. My guess is Memphis. Like, that's it. I think he's going to Memphis. I've stopped even really considering it too much. Even on the past couple of times where I have mentioned Antoine Hill on the show, I've said, I think he's going to Memphis. I think that they're the public favorite. I think they should be the public favorite. It's really hard to, I think, sell a 2025 kid on Florida, especially when you have your 2026 quarterback already committed. It's even harder, though, in this situation where he's got Memphis is the school that wants him and they want to maybe start him as a true freshman. Like, it kind of just works out that way for him. I think he's going to be a Memphis Tiger. That's fine. Offensive tackle Zaire Addison, priority number 1 for me on this entire recruit visit list. Zaire Addison is my number 1 guy in this class and in this 14-person weekend. And he's one of the top priorities I would have in the entire class. He said that Florida is around top 5, and then he named UCLA, Georgia, and Penn State too. But he has said that changes every week pretty much with him because he's always in touch with these big schools. But his top 9 initially, now he's talking about Florida being in the top 5. He said that he's planning on committing in August. There's already rumors that he's going to push that back into the fall. Wouldn't shock me if this is just one of those commitments that comes down to the late season, in which case Florida continue with your pushing, continue constantly being in contact. But also if Florida does end up performing well this season, you've got a pretty good selling point for Zaire Addison. If Florida doesn't, then well, selling just got a lot harder. When you talk about a kid like this, where it's like, yeah, I'm planning on committing in August, but I'm already like, even in an interview he did with, I think it was on 3, he was like, yeah, like August, September, like he's already kind of, maybe September-ish, and it's June. So if in June you're going, hey, September-ish, then maybe by the time we get to August, you're like, hey, November-ish. And that maybe that's just what he's going to be. But either way, I feel like when you're taking that long, Florida, you got a lot of time to make ground. Top 5 is not ideal, but again, he only named 3 schools in front of you. So I'm going to assume Florida's 4th right now. UCLA, Georgia, Penn State up there. It's possible. I'm not super optimistic, but again, my number one priority from this weekend would be, like without a doubt, it would be Zaire Addison. Then you had 2 tight ends on campus this week in tight end Tayshawn Gelsey and tight end Micah Jones. The Florida Gators are looking pretty damn solid for both of them, which bodes especially well because Florida wants to take 2 tight ends in this class. You look at the way that Florida's kind of recruited tight ends, and in the 2022 class, they went Hayden Hansen, Arliss Boardingham, Tony Livingston, Andrew Savai-Nye. At 4. Although Andrew Savai-Nye joined as an edge that can move to tight end, Tony Livingston joined as an offensive lineman that was moving to tight end. So it was kind of a lot of projects there, and even Arliss was a receiver that was going to be playing tight end full time. So they were kind of a lot of projects, but still 4 guys that were tight ends. Andrew Savai-Nye is now at, I think, Nevada. Tony Livingston is your 3rd tight end after he is gray shirted. So he was part of the actual 2023 class. He was a freshman last year. Then this year, you've got Amir Jackson, but you have a year where they went for 3 to 4, we'll say, with the Savai-Nye year in 2022. So you had 3 to 4, then you had 1, then you had 1, and now you're going to look for 2 again. And you also have Caleb Rillos as redshirting this year, walking on next year in the transfer portal. So you're kind of layering talent here at tight end. And I know that a lot of people look at all the receivers and we go, oh, they're going to spread it out and go 10 personnel and all this stuff. Florida's still clearly putting an emphasis on adding tight end talent to their roster. That's going to be a thing. It's always going to be part of their team, and that's fine. Tayshawn Gelsey is planning on announcing in July. As of right now, Florida's the leader. I don't care what anyone says. Like, for me, I think Florida's the leader. Micah Jones is planning on committing this summer at some point. Could be June, could be July, August. Who knows? It's just this summer. And again, Florida, I think, feels good about both of them. And I think they should feel good about both of them. Wide receiver Joshua Moore, who I mentioned before, he said, hey, I love knowing that Florida, like, future quarterbacks solved already. Like, it's decided who they have. He's got official visits still with Miami, Florida State, Georgia. I'm expecting him to announce his commitment after all of those official visits are done. So it's going to be a few weeks, which means hopefully Florida made a lasting impression. I think having a quarterback commit while you were on campus was a great selling point. I think that might have been planned. I was told that Will Griffin was a silent commit a few weeks back, which I never really put weight in the silent commit stuff. But was told that he's a silent commit a few weeks back. Then they have the first official visit weekend, and they have a bunch of offensive players on campus, and he commits. I feel like that's pretty good timing. Just want to say. But for Joshua Moore, even if you don't land him initially, I do think it helps that you have a head-to-head with all those other teams that he's got official visits with. Miami, you open the year. Florida State, you close the year. Georgia, you've got to start your last leg of the season. If you have, like, let's say he commits to any of those schools and you end up beating them, I promise you, Florida's going to be like, hey, we beat them. Sure you don't want to come join the good guys? My selling point, at least. Wide receiver Nashon Montgomery. I said that, I think he's going to be a Florida Gator. My understanding, it's either going to be Florida or Penn State. He's visiting Penn State next week. I still think it's going to be Florida. That's my understanding. And until things change, I'm still going to say that I think he's going to be a Florida Gator when it's all said and done. And the way that they would like to use him, the way they've told him they want to use him, very picture Trey Wilson 2023, just like that. Move him around, get him the ball in multiple ways, let him create some plays. We're about to flip to the defensive side of the ball, but first we're going to get a quick word from FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bets, $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to make every playoff shot count. And I need to tell you guys, yesterday was a good day. I just want to throw that one out. It was a damn good day for me. I'm pulling up FanDuel right now just to tell you how good. Oh, of course, Alec Baum screwed me. I hate that guy. But I had Juan Soto, Anthony Volpe to get a hit, plus 108, both cashed. Taylor Ward and Josh Rojas to get a hit, plus 152 combined, both cashed. It was a beautiful day. I also had Francisco Lindor screw me over. That was really fun as a Mets fan to watch them watch them lose and do that. That was super fun. Ryan Mountcastle, Jordan Westburg, Ahmed Rosario had that parlayed plus 108. Had Vlad Guerrero, O'Neal Cruz, Nick Gonzalez plus 177 parlay. Do you see what I'm saying? There's money to be made with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Looking at the defensive side of the ball from players that were on campus with their official visits this past weekend, defensive lineman Jarquez Carter is committing later this month. I can tell you that from what I've been told, Florida feels pretty good about it. You probably should too. I think a lot of Florida Gators fans, Jarquez Carter is kind of one of the guys where we go, when, not if. And I'm not sure it's that locked in, but Florida feels good about him. You probably should. And I think Florida should feel good about it. Like, you should be the favorite here. This is the kind of situation where you should be the favorite. Also, that was on campus this weekend, defensive lineman Myron Charles. I think that at this point, Florida feels good about what they've done. And again, I think Florida does a really good job, especially under Billy Napier. And with Gerald Chapman too. Gerald Chapman's been killing the relationship part of this. I think Florida feels good about what they've done. And I think that they should feel good about what they've done so far as Myron Charles goes. However, Myron Charles has 3 more official visits this month. I am expecting an announcement to be made shortly after his last one ends. So that's Florida State, the weekend of June 21st. Shortly after that wraps up, I'd expect an announcement, maybe like 4th of July weekend or something. But even if Florida feels good about what they've done, you do have to kind of acknowledge that 3 official visits from the time that you had him to the time he commits, things could change, right? Edge Javian Hilson, currently committed to Florida State, said that he'll be back. I believe it was for Florida hosting Miami. Win there, flip a kid, give it to both your rivals in the same night. Come on now. And yeah, like I've been told that Florida State doesn't feel super confident on him right now, just given that he's getting pulled from people. So maybe you can pull it off with Javian Hilson. Would be nice, but again, I said it. As long as you can go into this weekend and kind of rattle his commitment to Florida State, I'm happy with it. Linebacker Christian Gass loved his visit. He's set to announce his commitment in late July. He's got official visits with USC, Georgia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. It's going to be tough, especially like I just mentioned with Myron Charles. You know, he's got 3 more OVs. Christian Gass is 4. It's going to be a tough one, honestly, and obviously. At this point, I think he's going to wind up being a Gator or a Bulldog. You know, maybe I don't think Kentucky and Tennessee are gonna land him here. USC like they I don't know if you saw the clips that they were putting out with recruits that they had on campus, but they were pretty sick with the sword swinging and the camera flipping around and doing a whole bunch of nuts stuff. But for Christian Gass, to me, just feels like Florida-Georgia battle right here. And hopefully Florida walks away with it. He's a hell of a player either way. What was his name? Was it Chris Jones that we had this conversation about last year? I think his name is Chris Jones, the linebacker that ultimately committed to Georgia. And I was like, hey, like I still want him. Like he's a damn good player. Didn't happen, and he wasn't a take for Florida, but I'd still take him. Safety Jalen Morgan. I think this one's going to drag out for a long time. I think the official visit went well. He tweeted about it, family, like they seemed like it went well. However, I think it takes a long time because he's only got a top 6 published right now. He's got 3 or potentially 4 official visits scheduled. It's weird. He's got one weekend where it's like listed as, I think, Tennessee/Purdue. And so I'm assuming that's like up in the air of which one he's going to take, and he'll reschedule the other one. So I think this is one that's going to drag out, and maybe not until signing day, but a little bit later into the summer. I think it's going to drag out, which is fine. I don't think he's someone that Florida feels like is a must-have right now, especially with all they've added in the secondary, especially at safety lately. The last player to talk about is defensive back Caleb Singleton. Let me tell you, I've said it before. They've told him, hey, we want to play you at safety, but we think you can play corner. That, to me, again, I said this on the show last week, I think twice. I said it with the Insider program. That screams you're going to play nickel. Like, you're going to be star. That's all that screams to me. Which is fine. Great. Get him, though. I've said it's so damn tough to play that position. And I know I did not play football at a high level. I'm aware of that. However, for the level I played at, I was in the upper tier. I could play safety. I could play corner. I could not play star. It's damn tough. So if you can find a kid that you know can do it, or that you think can do it, or you feel can do it, get him. Add him to your roster. Do it. Because it's tough to find a good nickel. It is. And Caleb Singleton is a priority for Florida. I think that's why. I genuinely think that's why he's a priority. Because they know he can play star. He is still planning on taking his official visits to Syracuse and Rutgers. Florida should be well ahead of both of those schools. Michigan offered him just last week. If he takes an official visit to Michigan, I will be concerned. But if he doesn't, I think Florida has to beat out Syracuse and Rutgers, right? So it's up to Caleb Singleton at this point, but I know that Florida's prioritizing him. I know that I'd prioritize him as well. Could be a big-time player at the next level. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day, every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow, talk more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33, and I'll see you all next time.